A badge of honor. Police officers and first responders wear badges to let their communities know they are here to protect and serve. But that's not how it feels today, and the stress of the job is taking its toll, taking lives through suicide and post-traumatic stress injury. A Badge of Honor podcast features the cast of the same name, Sam Horwitz and John Salerno. Sam, John, and the team offer the first responders workshops through their critical incident stress management teams and mental health liaisons to offer state-certified T-COLE credit programs that save lives. It's time to smash through the stigma. It's time to heal from your injury, and it's time to back our blue. Welcome to A Badge of Honor podcast. Here are your hosts, Sam Horwitz and John Salerno.
Hey, welcome to A Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam. We are powered by the OBBM network and streaming on all your social media platforms along with Roku TV. Man, we're just blowing up there, Sam. Getting the word, getting our message across, helping our first responders in any way we can. You know, over the last couple of months, Sam, we've had cops who are veterans who've battled, and we're talking about the stress of the job. The one thing that we really got to take a deep dive into is that underlying thing that a lot of people are afraid to talk about, and that's the addiction aspect from the stresses of the job that we all have, be it alcohol, drugs, porn, gambling, whatever it is. There's a vice out there or addiction out there that every first responder sometimes strives to have to deal with some of the pain that they see throughout the job. And our guest tonight, we're going to hear from. But on the flip side of that, we want to dedicate today's show to all our law enforcement brothers and sisters in North Carolina. Terrible shooting during a search warrant, left U.S. Marshal, killed 2 correction officers and a Charlotte police officer, all killed in the line of duty, along with 4 other officers shot, all trying to serve this warrant. Just right here in the HEB area, Sam. I mean, I don't know if you know it, you're on the other side of the bridge, but the last 3 days we've had standoffs with police in North Richland Hills, in Hearst, in Irving. It seems like crime is getting out of control, and we are putting so much on our law enforcement officers each and every day, and they are not getting the mental help. They're not getting the stress relief. They're not getting the backing, and it just keeps on weighing and weighing and weighing on these officers. And with our guest tonight, we'll show just that breaking point that it can come to.
Absolutely. And you and I and Jeff and Jeff Freeman and John Edmondson know from all the work we've been doing since 2019, it's so easy for first responders to pick up a drink, to find things that kind of numb them out, to take the edge off, to help them decompress. And our guest tonight has 22 years as a law enforcement officer, both at the local level as well as the federal level. And he's dealt with a serious addiction to alcohol. And without further ado, Jeff Fields, welcome to A Badge of Honor podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah, tell everybody watching and listening on their favorite podcast app, about you. Where'd you grow up and how'd you get into law enforcement and all the good stuff?
So I'm originally from the Southwest. I grew up in New Mexico. I'm a Texas boy, but I grew up in New Mexico. That's where I started my career.
Oh, wow.
I spent roughly 6 years in New Mexico in local law enforcement, narcotics, whatnot, and then went to Arizona and did another 6 years or 4 years. My math's always terrible. 10 years total for local. And while I was in Arizona, I got on federally with Homeland Security and worked there for 3 years before I met my wife there, and my wife's from the East Coast. So we were trying to get back to the East Coast. And so I voluntarily requested to go to DC, which not a lot of people do that. So you can only imagine they were like, sure, come on up here. So my wife and I did 6 years up in D. She's also a federal agent. We did 6 years up in DC before I left Homeland Security and went and was a postal inspector for 3 years in North Carolina before I left the government. Left law enforcement altogether. So
Yeah.
this is where I live now.
There's a reason, why you left law enforcement. You kind of drew a personal line in the sand, and you wrote a book about it called Sober from Sin. And, let's dive right into that, because while you have a very decorated law enforcement career, you received accolades, awards for your work. You kept a big secret for a very long time until it didn't stay a secret.
Oh yeah, that's a great way to put it, because it certainly was behind a mask that we all put up, especially in law enforcement, and we hide so well. So closer to the end of my career, probably about 7 years, towards the end of my career, the drinking culture caught up with me. The law enforcement drinking culture that typically exists. And once I had gotten married, my wife was my audience and was able to tell me, you have a problem. And that's when it got worse, because I think I had a resentment towards women in general, because a lot of my story, and I talk about this in my book, has to do with trauma from my childhood, unresolved, that I did not know about until it started coming out later in life. And then I had all the work trauma on top of it. And so it just was really like a mess of digging through what was what and why was what. And so my drinking just increased because I didn't ever learn or have the coping skills that I needed throughout my career. And then to deal with the bureaucracy of the government on top of everything else. And I think that it was kind of a perfect storm for me to get down into that deep, dark place. And through it all, I think if anything, I learned that I did not have any type of control over what I was going to do next or where I was going to go. And it only got worse. And as my family started, or I had a daughter and our marriage, I think it was real evident that I had to do something, right? If I wasn't going to do anything, it was going to lose my family. But then I was like, well, I have this coveted career that I put so much into. And in the end, I had learned that the career meant nothing. It really didn't. The career was just an activity that I did. And that was what I needed to help me pull myself out, pull my bootstraps up and say, hey, I've got to clean myself up and try to get my priorities straight. And so, this is like a huge nutshell, 30,000 foot look at all of this, because it wasn't this easy and it wasn't this short. But as I got towards the end, I got sober at the same time I left my career. And so that was real telling to me. Because I haven't looked back at either. And so with all that in mind, with everything I had experienced and tried, and I was like, I got to talk about this in a book. There's one thing big in getting sober, and I'm not a big AA guy, but there's a lot of values in it I think are useful, right? And one of them is helping other people. And you don't tell other people what to do. You show them what you are doing, and it may resonate with them, it may not. Because addiction's addiction. It always looks the same. But somebody in law enforcement, it does look a little bit different, just simply because you're dealing with different stressors, right?
So let's get into those stressors and kind of go back to where you realize that you had this unresolved traumas. You've been on a lot of couches, a lot of things didn't work. So let's dive into the meat of it when we come back from our first break. We'll be right back, everybody, with Jeff Fields. Stay tuned.
Move freely, America, without medical restrictions or penalty. Without medical freedom legislation in place, our rights and freedoms are one vote away from being dissolved. Move freely, America, with one voice, without fear of retribution, achieving a common goal, medical freedom. We the people make our voices heard by connecting with state legislators and engaging a constitutionally compliant medical Bill of Rights for all citizens. Individually, change is improbable, but as an aggregate, attainable. It's time to act with one voice. My voice.
And my voice.
And my voice.
And my voice.
To protect our freedom, creating one voice that cannot be ignored. This requires your voice, too. Move Freely America. Go to movefreelyamerica.org to find a chapter near you. Plug in, donate, and help our legislators defend our God-given rights under the Constitution. Move Freely America. My voice.
And my voice.
And together with your voice, we're one voice that cannot be ignored. Donate today. MoveFreelyAmerica.org.
Hey, welcome back to a Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam with our special guest, Jeff Fields, who is on both sides of law enforcement, on the government side and on the local side. You know, going back to some of your history, going and talking about New Mexico, probably one of the hardest police departments to work for over there. You deal with so much diversity, and it's a dangerous place to work. You know, we got these big cities, but New Mexico's a department of its own, so that puts a lot of stress on you. Where in New Mexico did you work?
So I was in southern New Mexico, and I started off at a smaller community. It was a town called Alamogordo. So it's a military town, about 35,000. But we were only 80 miles from the border.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so, as you can imagine, everything that you're doing down there typically has to do with narcotics or immigration stuff. I stayed on the border nearly my whole 10 years because when I went to Arizona, I was in Tucson. I was outside of Phoenix. And so I never seemed to get away from all of that. That's what I'm saying. The only way to get out, and as everybody knows that works for the government, is if you got to ask to go to DC if you want to get off the border.
It's a challenging career that you faced in the early stages, and you're probably a young cop back then. So what I want to ask about the drinking and about the addictions was, were you a big drinker prior, or did it come on over time?
I'd always been a big drinker. I'm a binge drinker. I always had it under control during the week or during work. And then, let loose on the 3 days off or whatnot, heavy drinking. But I could turn it off after, 2 or 3 days. But it starts, those lines became blurred towards later on in my career.
Were
Right.
parents drinkers?
So, yeah, my mom was a closet alcoholic, I think. I mean, she cleaned herself up, I think, later on in life. And my dad wasn't a huge drinker. He was law enforcement too. I mean, he did 30 years. And so he drank like you would drink in law enforcement, but it tapered off towards the end of his career as well. So I don't think it was anybody in my family necessarily outside of my immediate family. I do have uncles that were alcoholics that were also law enforcement that had issues. So it is in the blood, so to speak.
Yeah, let's talk about those issues, because the book's called Sober from Sin, and you go into some intense, it felt intense to me, I'll say, the detail with the amounts of alcohol you were consuming. Like I said, you said you were a binge drinker. I think we get that, okay, you're on your days off, but when those lines became blurred, you almost set your schedule in law enforcement up to where you could go on a binge, on a tear, and kind of keep it there, which included hiding stuff at home.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of the greatest things about going in federal law enforcement is you had a little bit more freedom to drink. I think once I got more administrative in my career, it was easier for me to drink from home or, in a car somewhere, because, nobody's checking up on you. And plus you're not doing warrants every day. You're not kicking in doors. So your mind doesn't need to be clear all the time, which doesn't mean anything, because there were times when I was in local law enforcement, my mind wasn't clear. I was hungover, but, I certainly wouldn't be able to drink in a patrol car. I know guys do and have, but I wasn't at that point in my life at that time. And so I think my federal career for me facilitated it. It was a whole lot easier for me to get away with it. And then being at home, it became a cat and mouse game with me. Like I said before, my wife is law enforcement. And so, she didn't like the amounts I was drinking. I resented her for that. And so I was like, well, I'm going to hide it because I want to get one up on her. And I'm like, and let me see if she can find this. This is a game. And so I'd get real creative about hiding things, planning out where things should be hidden in the house, because I knew I was going to be in that room at a specific time, or if she was going to find something, I knew exactly where I could find something else. And so, this is where they say it's a disease. It's an illness. It really is, because you spend so much time with the preparation to drink for short periods, and then spend a long time recovering from it, only to start all over again the next day.
Right. And the thing that is, I call it fascinating, because you take people in the book through your days, what it looked like, having the neighbor even involved in putting vodka in water bottles, not only the level at you went to at home to conceal it, but that there was no realization that, your work was suffering from it. Was there anybody from, we'll fast forward to your federal, we'll go back in a moment to your local, but in the federal, that ever tapped you on the shoulder and said, hey, Jeff, let's go talk about this, because something's not right.
No. And I wish there had been, and that's the reality of the culture. I think that, like I said before, I didn't know I had a problem when I was drinking with my squad or my coworkers. Right. I only knew I had a problem when an outsider came in and told me that, because to my buddies that I'm drinking with, they're consuming just as much. Now, they may not go home and continue to drink like I was, but nobody knew that I was doing that. Right. And so I had wished somebody had tapped me on the shoulder. That's partly why I'm doing what I'm doing now. I don't know if it would have changed things. But I voluntarily went to rehab
Right.
twice, and one of the time, both federally. And, after that, I got a little bit of like, hey, you doing all right? Pat on the back, this and that. But then it's forgotten.
Let's talk about that when we come back from our next break, because you talk about it in the book, what happened when you got released from rehab, and kind of it's just like hoops, because the feds and even some of the local departments, they just don't do a good job following up with their folks, and it's more of let's get you back out there. Pat on the back kind of thing. So we'll be right back after this next break. Everybody stay tuned.
Interested in starting a podcast or TV show? Worried about what you'll say and how to keep it engaging? Think you'd like to be a guest on podcast, radio, or TV shows? Hi, I'm Susan Hamilton, owner and founder of OBBM Network, and I would like to invite you to an OBBM media training to get the tools you need for a relaxed and polished performance you'll be proud to share. Our specialized training techniques include role play, voice training, and everything you need to deliver a confident, clear, and engaging interaction. Go to offbeatbusiness.com. Go to the calendar and register for a training that's convenient for you. Dates available now, 214-714-0495.
Hey, welcome back to a Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam, with former retired law enforcement and government federal agent Jeff Fields. Before we took our last break, we were talking about, the addictions of many of our officers out there and the troubles that they face. And Jeff, you were telling us about how exhausting it is to stay on that path of hiding stuff from not only your wife, but from the job. And, Sam brought up, nobody ever tapped you on the shoulder. Nobody ever said, it's just like mental health. After something bad happens, that's when everybody jumps on the bandwagon and says, oh, I seen it, or I nobody has the balls enough or courage in it. Not everybody, but to say, hey, Jeff, listen, bro, we got a problem. You're looking a little disheveled, or you're smelling a little, like alcohol today. What's going on? We got to stop personalizing each other. We're willing to lay down our life for each other, but we're not willing to have a conversation.
Yeah. And I think those conversations are difficult. I mean, it is awkward. But I think that it's too late whenever somebody finally decides to do it. Right. We know so many, my wife and I know so many people in the government that have drinking issues, who have either been forced out or put away in a closet to finish out their career. And, both of those are the wrong answer, I think. Right.
Yeah.
So, and like Sam said before the break, so when I got back from rehab, and this was a voluntary commitment, um, they were like, "Okay, you doing all right? Well, we need a battery of doctor releases. We need to review stuff. We need to have our agency attorneys look at things. Basically, rubber gun squad." And I'm like, "Well, wait a
Because now
minute.
you're a liability.
Yeah, exactly." And that made me feel like I was a broken toy. And
Mhm.
so I was questioning, well, did I make the right decision going to rehab in the first place? And
Right.
so it really left it. That was the first bad taste I had in my mouth. And I worked for a smaller agency within Homeland Security, and granted, it probably didn't have the resources. But just to give you an example, so EAP is a big thing, right, in the federal government. They push that employee assistance. Um, you know, Typically EAP contracts with an outside company that helps with mental health or addictions. But I learned quickly by calling EAP, the contract had lapsed with the agency I was with. The doctor wasn't even familiar with the agency anymore. He was like, "Hey, I don't work with you guys anymore. Let me see if I can find somebody in your area that can help you." And of course, when you're down and out, and that moment, it took a lot for me to even make the phone call. I'm like, "Well, screw this. I'm not going to mess with it anymore." But that just showed me that we were so far out of touch with some of this stuff. And then talk about a little too late, when things do come out in an agency and they would say, "Hey, you got drinking issue, lean on your partner or talk to him, peer support." But a lot of those programs, in my experience, were set up for administrative staff, not for the law enforcement side, because the law enforcement side had the top secret clearance, right? Which is a whole different ball game. And Sam may know about this. When any type you do your re-ups on your reinvestigations for your top secret clearance, nobody goes in there and tells the truth. I'm not going to tell you that I'm taking prescription medications, that I've been to counseling. I'll say I went to counseling. Yeah, marriage counseling.
Right.
That's very
Right.
benign. And so that was another red flag for me. It's like, why am I lying to this so I can keep my job, so I can keep my clearance when I have a problem? And so I would tell buddies, do they want somebody that's medicated and seeing a therapist and has a good grounding carrying a gun, or do they want somebody that's not carrying a gun, right? And it was beyond me that there was that disconnect between the people struggling and the agency. Like you said, liability.
Mhm.
Who do you care about, your people, or do you care about the agency? You're a number.
Right.
Right. Well, when there's no safe place to land, especially coming out of, voluntarily going in twice, and then coming out, and all it is question marks. And is he going to be okay? What are we going to do here? Oh, let's just get him back out there. Dot the I's, cross the T's, check all the right boxes, and the longer that, either, I don't want to call it a blind eye, because they know that there's a problem, whether you're in the federal level or the local level. There's alcohol mixed into the culture because it's always been there.
Mm-hmm.
And we should be encouraging those to come forward, and because you make a difference for other people when the agency does the right thing and gives you that safe place to land, instead of, kind of like you said, promote up and stick you in a closet for as many years or months or whatever that you have left. But you write about in your book, again, it's called Sober from Sin. Get it where books are sold. And you had a couple of what I would call like the eye-opening moments.
Mm-hmm.
Being arrested, going home, being arrested by the locals, and kind of having that oh shit factor. Now what?
Mm-hmm.
And no, that didn't really change anything. And then with your daughter, seeing your behavior, Nope, that didn't do anything. Going into rehab, nope, that didn't do anything. So yes, disease. It definitely progressed to that level. And I'm not an addiction expert, neither is John. We like to bring these things out into the open. What do you think, looking back to where it first started at the local and you got locked up there, what would have had to happen differently for you to have said, oh, wait a second?
Yeah, I think what it was, I mean, it was a double-edged sword for me because, like I said, I had the unresolved trauma and I couldn't treat the unresolved trauma when I was still drinking. I needed a baseline. And so in order for me to stop drinking was a hurdle in itself. And then after that, treat the illness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, you work towards sobriety. And so I don't think I would have been able to do it necessarily, no matter what had happened. But going back to the federal thing. So yeah, I got arrested on a federal detail. I was on a detail and I got arrested by the department that actually started where I started my career. And that was it was a huge reality check for me. But like I say in my book, I got back, I did my 2 weeks, right? I wasn't complaining at the time and humility left and right. But about 6 months later, I get promoted. I get promoted up to, a GS-14 and I'm like, well, man, I not only, missed the boat on that one, I'm doing well now. And so I don't think that there was any real consequence. Like my wife likes to say, there wasn't any consequence for you. And
there wasn't any consequence at your job, but there kind of was consequences at home.
Yeah. My wife will tell you, she was waiting for the phone call for the DUI. She actually was hoping I'd get a DUI. And even after I had that one, I think she was hoping secretly, it's called detaching with love, right? So she was trying to, what can happen that will stop this nightmare?
She figured it would be a wake-up call for you.
Yeah, a wake-up call. And I mean, the reality of it, anybody that's suffering with any kind of addiction, it has to be your decision, right? It doesn't matter. I mean, I love my daughter more than the world. I love my family more than the world, but that was not enough. Because it had to be my decision to say, hey, I've got to put this away. I've got to do what I got to do this for myself, right? I went to rehab for my family the first time. The second time I went to rehab, I went for myself. Right. And so that's what I had to do and continue to do. But I had to start tackling that unresolved trauma after I had any type of length of sobriety in order for me to just fix that illness, right? I shouldn't say fix because it's never fixed, but to just find a good baseline where I can build upon.
Yeah. And you write about kind of couch surfing or looking for therapists that could help you with that unresolved trauma. And boy, you stuck with it for a while, but eventually that addiction monster just was like, see, it's not working. I don't want to, do that on our show, but see, it's not working. So let's talk about that when we come back from our next break. Stay tuned, everybody. We're talking with Jeff Fields. We'll be right back.
Look, when you need to respond to an aggressive situation to protect yourself, your family, or your property, understanding your firearm and legal position are critical. Officers know your skills are only as good as your commitment to training. So know what you're doing. So when you're in a vulnerable situation, we can count on your response. Whether you're a beginner or a licensed gun carrier, Carry in Texas offers basic firearms training, Texas permitless carry courses, license to carry, and basic 2A courses so you can understand the responsibilities, situational awareness, and learn the technical skill required when you carry your firearm. Go to carryintexas.com to find the right course for you. Join me, former United States Secret Service agent Samantha Horwitz on the range for beginner basics, LTC prep, and range practice. Go to carryintexas.com today. That's carryintexas.com.
Hey, welcome back to a Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam, with our special guest, Jeff Fields. Before we took that last break, we were talking about things that led up to, I don't want to put a number on it, but a lot of law enforcement suffered different types of addictions and different types of stresses. It's all individualized. But I do want to bring it back just a tad, because you did say something about childhood trauma and your coping mechanisms. Do you feel now, through rehab for yourself, not for your family, the rehab for yourself, do you feel like your coping mechanisms have improved and they're becoming stronger?
I do. I mean, I should say that the second rehab didn't stick, right? I mean, I think rehab for me, all it did was it taught me what tools I needed to use and how to use them. But then they cut you loose. Now it's up to you on how to figure this out on your own and lean on other people that are similar in paths. And so that's what I did. And so, yes, I mean, I'm a big faith guy, right? God is a big thing in my life. I had to find something bigger than me, bigger than my addiction, bigger than my career. And that's what I had to really lean into and be very structured in that. You know, we're in first responders, right? You need structure. We all need structure. And so I had to continue with that structure. And that helped me not only navigate the drinking, but it has also helped me to find some type of peace with the childhood stuff, right? I'm not a victim guy. I'm not going to wallow in it. All I'm going to do is build upon it, because there's a lot of superpowers that come from this. There really
Right.
is, right? And so part of the thing that I have learned is that you can't keep what you don't give away, right? And so it's helping me by trying to help others. And I'll tell you, I'm being selfish about it. I don't care, because if it helps somebody else, then
Right.
it's a win-win. And so that's kind of where I've lived over the last 2 years, is where I've just stayed very faithful to God and to my family. Yeah, the party's over. It did suck. You know, the party's over. It really is. But you know what? I'm 45
It's
years
not
old.
over. It's not over. It's just it's a new
It's a
party.
new party. Yeah,
It's a
and
new
New
also
party.
party, right?
It's a
New
new
party.
party.
and I also think that we have an issue in the world, not just in the United States, with men who need to grow up, right? And I was one of them, and I think that I really need to reevaluate where I had my fun. You know, I had my crazy times. I did what I needed to do, but I have a family now. This is my responsibility, and I'll find joy and fun, like you said, John, now in that.
Right. Now, did you have to wipe away? Because I know a lot of officers are probably listening, going, because we become the job, right? Me
Yeah.
and Sam always say that we become the job. And in the beginning of the show, back in the green room, when Sam mentioned all your credentials, you kind of were just like, yeah, they're just on the wall. And I don't want to demean them or anything or blow them off, but did you have to wipe away that part of your life, the law enforcement, to be able to take on the new role, to have that faith and say, because we all have attitudes and we all have that high profile of ourselves when we're cops, when
Yeah.
we're wearing the badge. We sometimes take that into our other lives, and we feel that nothing could hurt us. So we're scared to take on, like you said, you found faith. So we feel that. Did you have to wipe away? I don't know if I'm explaining it right, but did you
Yeah.
have
No.
to wipe away the back end of your life to move on with the front end of your life?
Yeah, I mean it's in the background, literally, right? I don't even pay
Right.
attention to it as much anymore. I became very apathetic towards the end of my career. I really couldn't take my job seriously. I didn't believe in the mission anymore. And so it was easy for me to just kind of wash my hands of it. Now I look at it as it was an experience in my life, and it was it had a lot of positives to it. But I feel like I had a higher calling, and this may be it. I don't know. Maybe it's raising my daughter to grow up and cure some disease. I don't know, right? So it's
Right.
not. It wasn't about the bravado anymore in law enforcement that I had. But I lost that a long time ago, which is curious to me. And I often say this: I may have been in the wrong line of work. I followed my dad's footsteps, my family's footsteps. I married into law enforcement, and I'm like, man, I don't really feel like should be in this space. But you know what? I did 22 years. I did my time, right?
Yeah.
And I love law enforcement. I really do. I just don't know if I was as useful to the career anymore. So it was easy for me to just walk away. I used to get embarrassed about it. I wouldn't carry my gun anywhere because I didn't want to draw attention to me, and that's a whole childhood trauma thing too, right? People would be staring at me and all this. It's very complex, but you know what? I'm not going to sit in it and wonder why it was so complex. I just move forward, right?
Yeah, well, and you talk about moving forward with the tools, but with now it's using the tools, but with structure. And so call it the best part of training, the exciting part of when we first got into law enforcement, where we learned, the tools that we needed to be successful at the job. Once you're off the job, it's the tools that I need to be successful to be a dad, to be moving on in this next party with a wife now that is not worried about, where you hid everything. And, a testament to you guys for staying married, because, you write about, there were times that it was like, I don't know about this. She even, I believe your second house, or there was some property that, was in her name, because it was like this close to saying, you're out, bud.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing that helped her in our marriage and her going through all this was she educated herself early on. And she went to meetings for women that were, or wives that were struggling. She read books, she listened to podcasts. She really wanted to know. And what fascinated more than anything, and this is a big theme in my book, is the cause and effect, right? So what had happened early on in my life created something result, right? So something early in my life created my addiction, or I shouldn't say addiction, my lack of coping skills, right? I just went to addiction or to drinking. It was a symptom of a bigger thing. And so from there, we kind of just built on like, okay, well, what's bothering you right now that you feel you need to do X, Y, and Z? And so she's been amazing when it comes to that kind of stuff, and very supportive of me right now. She was the one that was really big on like, hey, if you walk away from your career, it's going to be okay, right? And I think that helped me a lot. I mean, there was a lot of reasons that I left my career. I mean, I had 2 neck surgeries. My neck is fused. It didn't make a lot of sense for me to stay in. And I'm like, well, there's another reason. If I'm ashamed of my addiction, which I'm not, I'm an open book, literally, right? I tell everybody everything. And that's the other thing too. I don't want to beat my chest. There's enough people beating their chest out there. There's not enough people out there saying, hey, look at me. I was a piece of shit. Right. But now I've gotten through that, and my daughter loves me, and my wife loves me, and I've got this, and I've got that. And that's what really mattered.
Yeah. And you came very dangerously close to taking your own life. It's very detailed in the book, and your wife coming in. And I mean, again, it was another moment where it's like, okay, this has to be rock bottom.
Yeah, you would think. And
that wasn't it either.
Yeah, you would think. I mean, that's where they say alcohol is very cunning, and it's sneaky. But I think that I had somewhat of a good foundation, knowing that, because at that point in my life, I had a good foundation knowing that, hey, my daughter's not going to have a father, and I'm going to screw up another life, right? Another generation, which my wife would turn around and remind me, well, you already are. Right. So, but I mean, one of the things my dad did instill into me growing up was, it always gets better in a day, a week, or a month. And it's so true. It does. Right. If you had asked me, 2 years ago, that I'd be sitting here right now, I'd say you're full of it. There's just no way. Right. Well, things got better. Right. Things got better. It may have not been my plan. And that's you letting go of control and showing humility and saying, hey, I don't know what's going to happen next, but I know what's going to happen today, and I'm not going to drink. And that's all that matters.
Now, sobriety is probably one of the most hardest things to do, especially when alcohol is still legal. It's available everywhere you go, every party you go to, every social function you go to. What are some of the battles with sobriety that you face on an everyday basis?
Yeah. And I shouldn't say, I don't hate alcohol. I don't hate the institution of it. I don't care. My wife still has glasses of wine every once in a while, right? We're at that point. I just hate what it did to me. And be honest with you, I hate the people that can have 2 or 3 drinks and be done. I'm like, how could you do that? I could never do that, right? But I mean, it's just my makeup. It's just the way that I am. And I've just got to move forward. And I find other highs. Like other men, I do struggle with other addiction issues. I mean, I drink coffee and nicotine like it's going out of style, right? Yeah. But it's not going to kill me, at least not quickly. But I just think that it's a day at a time thing with any type of thing I'm dealing with. And the biggest thing that I had to get over was self, right? I needed to quit being selfish about things. And that's what I did forever. I mean, I was just, it's my way or the highway. Screw you, I'm going to drink.
And you talk about that again very openly in your book. Guys, we're talking with Jeff Fields. He is the author of Sober from Sin, an incredible law enforcement career, both at the local and federal level. We got to take our next break. When we come back, John, when we come back from commercial, let's touch on, Jeff, what you feel law enforcement or first responder, the community as a whole, needs to do to grab a hold of people that suffered with this disease like you did. Stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back.
Rise and vibe with your new elevated morning ritual. Meet Rise by Frequency. Frequency charged nutrition. Rise is formulated with a blend of 7 different organic mushrooms, B vitamins, amino acids, and green coffee bean extract. Rise supports brain health, performance, and focus while enhancing mood, mental clarity, and energy. Enjoy the delicious mango lemonade flavor while giving your mind the nutrients it needs. Get charged up with Rise. Fuel your body and mind today.
Hey, and we are back front with a Badge of Honor podcast. And what you just saw is one of the most amazing supplements out there on the market for your health. John and I talk about wellness and resiliency. Well, that includes your health. And, you know, this Rise stuff, the 7 different mushroom blend, it is, if you haven't heard of a nootropic, that's the classification that it's in. I have been taking it and it supercharges my morning. I have it first thing. I mix it with the Source Naturals, which is that is a group of all minerals that your body absolutely needs. It tastes like the best iced tea, especially since it's 1,000 degrees here in Texas. Boom, I'm ready for my workout. So it's like my pre-workout go-to. But there are no jitters. It's not like an energy drink. And boy, do we see that in our first responder community, folks. This is healthy energy that will sustain throughout the day. There is no crash. There's no sugar. It is completely natural. And so if you want to find out more, we got a special going on. You can go to abadgeofhonorhealth.com. That's abadgeofhonorhealth.com. And right now, subscribe and save 10% on your order. So go to abadgeofhonorhealth.com, rise and vibe with us. All right. That is our newest commercial. Thank you so much, Frequency. It really truly is amazing stuff. You should get some. So Jeff, let's talk about what the law enforcement, our first responder community really needs to do, whether you want to take it from an admin standpoint or talk to, everybody watching.
So I think first off is the humility thing, right? We need to start putting ourselves and our family before our career, right? I mean our career, I've learned once you leave, everybody forgets about you or they won't answer your calls anymore. So what does it matter? And so I think you just really had to prioritize what is important to you early on in your career. And I think also knowing that the agency is not going to have your best interest typically, right? And so when you go into that, it's really important to lean on each other. I'm a big fan of peer support. I think peer support's amazing. And I think more agencies need to start utilizing it more often, but also if you're going to have a successful peer support system, you're going to have to just let your mask down. You're just going to have to let your mask down and talk, and do it quickly and do it early on so you don't fall into the shame or the guilt phase, because that only compounds things. So, and if I were a manager, and I say this all the time, you, you worry about your people, don't worry about what the agency thinks, right? And the liability stance, the attorneys at the agency. The manager is guy with the boots on the ground, and he should be the one that has the best tone of what's going on with his group or team or squad or whatever it is. And I think that if you're not so quick to get rid of or fix a personality problem or a family problem, your troops are going to talk to you. They're going to come talk to you, and that's what's needed. Instead of feeling like this is the last resort, talking to my boss. No, it should have been your first. It should have been the first thing you felt comfortable doing.
Yeah.
But you know,
Yeah.
when you say all that, and I think it's great, and I think that's the way it should be too. But you know, the way law enforcement today is structured, we are set up, excuse me, set up to fail. 10-hour shifts, 12-hour shifts, forced overtime, minimal manning. We spend more time on our job than we do see our families, right? So maybe you'll see, you get a couple days off, but you're decompressing those 3 days or 2 days, and you're sleeping or you're doing stuff around the house. So we disconnect from our families very easily. We need to bring what you just said into our law enforcement.
Well, and also, I mean, you said a key term there, decompressing, right? How are you decompressing?
Exactly. How? Right.
A lot
We
of
need
people
to teach skills on that.
Yeah, we need the skill, and I wish they would teach us in the academy. When I went through the academy back in 01, we had a class on grief. That was the extent of mental health training.
Okay.
Class of what?
Grief?
Like how to deal with death notifications and make sure
Oh,
that didn't
yeah.
bother
Okay.
you, right? And so why aren't we having an 8-hour course, 80-hour course on it, right? Starting with the family dynamic, addictions, this and that, peer support, all that. I think that's where it needs to start, because the group of people that are coming into law enforcement now already have a ton of mental health issues, unfortunately, because of the way the world is right now. It's not their fault, right?
No.
It's just the way society is, the social media, the internet, whatever. I hate to sound like an old man, but really I can see it. I see it in my daughter. She's 7 years old. So if you're coming in with people already on with that stuff on board, you need to be ahead of the game, because you're about to pile a whole bunch of other stuff on top of it.
And we know the feds are never ahead of the game. They're usually always playing catch up. So Jeff, I've had, for everybody listening on your favorite podcast app, you can find out more about Jeff, his amazing story. Again, the book is called Sober from Sin, and it's thejefffields.com. That's his website. Where else can people connect with you, Jeff?
I'm on LinkedIn under my name. And also I'm real big on Instagram. I like to do a lot of posts on there as far as like navigating through whatever you're going through. So, and that's just Sober from Sin.
Okay, Sober from Sin on Instagram. And yeah, I came across when we connected on there, and it really is, if you guys go onto Jeff's Instagram, you will see that it's little nuggets that you're practicing every day.
Yeah.
You talked about that, your structure and thought-provoking things, so that if you're hearing yourself in Jeff's story, we talked about the wake-up call being tough. Do you think that somebody going to your Instagram, again, it's Sober from Sin on Instagram, that they can take what they're seeing, possibly connect directly with you, and could that be like their moment to like, I need to stop?
I mean, it could be. I mean, it doesn't have to be an ugly stop, right? It doesn't have to be rock bottom. You don't need to lose your marriage or your job. Rock bottom is subjective to people. You could be drinking 2 glasses of wine every night and that's it. But you have a problem. It's a problem. If it's a problem to you, it's a problem. And so, yes. And I mean, if people want to reach out to me personally, you can email me on my jefffields.com website. At the bottom, I have contact information. We lean on each other. We learn from each other. So I'm absolutely there for whatever that looks like for you.
Well, that is outstanding, Jeff. Thank you so much
Thank you.
for being somebody to lean on, for writing this book. You guys, you got to visit his website, get the book, Sober from Sin. Jeff, you're completely vulnerable. You put it all out there. Like I said, there's not a lot of things in certainly my career and John's career that make us go, whoa. And your book made us go, whoa, this is big. And it really was written in a way so that we understand the disease behind the addiction, so that hopefully it never gets there for somebody that picks it up. And this is not a book just for law enforcement.
No.
Yes, law enforcement, but beyond, to just understand what addiction looks like. So if you're living with somebody that you know has a problem, pick up Jeff's book. Again, it's called Sober from Sin. And Jeff, thank you so much for spending the time with us this evening and telling your story. Again, being so open, and all of those recommendations that I hope people will take for themselves personally and back to the department.
And keep
Awesome.
moving
Thank
forward,
you.
brother.
Thank you all. Keep doing what you're doing. Thank you.
God bless you for all the great messages. Thank you so much, Jeff. We'll be in
Thank
touch.
All right.
All right.
Bye.
Yeah, right. See, there you go. You did it again. Woo.
I'm just thinking, with his story, we were talking about feds and we're talking about local. This is I want to say a success story, because it didn't end up with a death. It ended up with somebody who overcame the addictions, and it should be praised by every command that's out there. Should be praising him for the strength that he has to do this. And instead, like he said, if you bring this to them, they lock it away in a closet and hide it.
Or promote you.
Right. But they don't want.
We're seeing a lot of promotions in the feds right now for different reasons. It doesn't have to be a alcohol. It could be somebody getting shot and killed.
Right.
We'll just promote them. It'll be okay. That's a whole nother podcast.
This is an actual success story, and it should be shared, and it should be valued, man, because there's so many, and Sam, I know you share some of that. Yeah. When we talk about after 9/11, you share some of that so you can connect with that a little bit. And there's so many others that we do not see that are going through this each and every day.
Yeah. And, for those of you, who connected with this, and John, you said, we share it. I share it as part of my story and the drinking and the coping mechanism after 9/11. And we're having, we have workshops. If this is the first time that you're joining us on the podcast, please hit that like and subscribe button there. But on September 6th, we've got a workshop coming up. Now that's private. We do private and open workshops. The September one happens to be private, but later in September, the 20th, we have a joint workshop where you can, let's get out of the office. Let's get a day outside in nature. We're doing equine therapy. We're doing healing on the water with Heroes on the Water. We're doing kayak fishing. We're talking about our stories. And that's it's only open. I think we're doing 16 first responders. All of our events and everything about where we are and what we're doing. Go to abadgeofhonor.org, click on events, and you can find out. I am putting more and more stuff on as we solidify those events. If you got any questions, you can connect with us through abadgeofhonor.org right at the top, or just hit us up on the phone. Our phone number is up there. Again, everybody that tunes in every week, thank you so much. Keep hitting that like, keep hitting that subscribe button. I think we're coming up on some pretty cool magic numbers. Watch this episode again. It'll be on replay tomorrow. It'll go up on Roku this week, and you can listen on your favorite podcast app. Thank you if you're listening from there. We just want to tell all of our first responders out there that we pray for you every single day. Okay, please, if you know this is what you're supposed to do, stay in the fight. You have got thousands, tens of thousands of people out there that really do support you, even though it might not look like that from social media and the news. Just stay away from all that. Know that you have people out there that love you, that support you, and that pray for you. Thank you for keeping our community safe. For all of our veterans out there, thank you so much for fighting the good fight, for allowing John and I to speak freely, to do a show like this every single week, and for all of our active duty personnel across the globe. Things are heating up. We don't know what direction our men and women are going to get called and what the next battle is, but thank you for staying vigilant, no matter where you're serving across the globe, keeping our shores safe and our enemies at bay. John, take us home.
Well, just like in the beginning of the show, just keep Charlotte, North Carolina, and all the families and the law enforcement personnel in your prayers. They took a very, very, very hard hit today. This is something that our law enforcement goes through every single day across our nation, and we can't thank you guys enough for really keeping us safe, like Sam said. So keep everybody in your prayers. Until next week, peace.
See you next week, everybody. Take care.
A Badge of Honor podcast is produced for the OBBM Network podcast and protected under copyright law. For content permissions, please submit your request to abadgeofhonor.com on the content page. For OBBM Network programming information, please call 214-714-0495 today.